Our last adventure in subjunctive clauses comes in the form of purpose and result clauses. In other words, with purpose and result clauses, we're going to explore how we can use ut in many, many different ways beyond the first one that you learned with indirect commands. Before today, you also knew that ut means as, like when you're forming a comparison. In English, we call these similes, right? She was as fast as a cheetah. So ut means as. It can be used in similes. You also know that in indirect commands, it means to. And it's used to indicate whatever the person who has been commanded or asked will be expected to do. So in a purpose clause, we use ut in a different way. Ut is used when you perform an action in order to accomplish something else. The girl ran 5 miles to train for the race. You can also express this with a slightly longer sentence. The girl ran 5 miles in order to train for the race. And in a sentence like that, you would use the word ut in Latin. The opposite of ut is ne, as you know from your indirect command experience. In a purpose clause, that's used when you perform an action so that something else does not happen. The girl went to bed early so that she would not be tired for the race. And in that sense, you would use ne to kind of have this idea of a negative outcome. I've given you some Latin examples now of the purpose clause. Sextus runs to the tree, ut a lupo se calat, to hide from the wolf. Using ne in a similar idea, Sextus ad arborem currit ne lupus se edat. Sextus runs to the tree so that the wolf does not eat him. So doing something with a purpose. In the first one with ut, it was a positive purpose, but in the second one with ne, it was a negative purpose. Now, ne, you saw, means so that something would not happen. But in English, we actually have a really simple way of translating ne, and that is the word lest. I know, it seems like kind of an archaic and kind of a weird word. However, lest is a really succinct way of saying so that something might not happen. Sextus runs to the tree lest the wolf eat him. That seems like a lot easier to say than Sextus runs to the tree so that the wolf does not eat him. It becomes much more wordy. So if you can employ lest, you probably should. That said, always be mindful of the fact that lest has a negative connotation to it. So now we're going to use ut in a third way. We're going to use them with something called result clauses. The students were so tired that they could barely stay awake. We have so many cats that we do not have room for a dog in our house. In a result clause, then, you can see this relationship between the dependent clause and the independent clause. The indicative verb, the independent clause, happens as a result of the subjunctive part at the beginning of the sentence. The students were so tired. So these sentences have something in common. We have so or such, etc. These are going to be called from here on in ding-ding words, because every time you see them in a sentence, usually it's at the beginning of the sentence, every time you see one of those, a little bell in your head should go off, ding, 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 ding. This is a result clause. Every result clause that you translate will definitely have one ding-ding word to alert you to the fact that this is definitely going to be a result clause. Here is a list of the ding-ding words with which you need to be familiar. Tom, tanta, tote, ad eo, ita, sic, tantum, and talis. Each of these has some sort of degree of difference that will result in something in the second half of the sentence. You might want to pause the video now to write down all of these terms that you're going to need to know for result clauses. After the ding-ding word, now you get to the subjunctive dependent part of the sentence. In a result clause, you use ut when the indicative or the so part of the sentence caused the subjunctive, the dependent clause, to happen. You would use ut non if the indicative part of the sentence caused the subjunctive phrase not to happen. So this is a different setup then than a purpose clause, because instead of nay being the negative version, you still use ut, but then you cancel out the regular verb with a non, which is exactly what you would expect to cancel out a verb. Some examples for you. Cornelia est tam pulchra ut Valerius eam in matrimonium ducere velit. Cornelia is so beautiful that Valerius wants to marry her. Number 2, Sextus erat molestus ad eo ut non ceteri liberi eum amarent. Sextus was annoying to such an extent that other children did not like him. And finally, I've separated the ut and the non in our third example here. Cornelius tantam canam dedit, ut convivi discedere non velent. Cornelius gave such a great dinner that the dinner guests did not want to leave. So we have several uses of ut now that we're going to differentiate by what happens before the ut. In an indirect command, we have a verb of commanding or asking that must appear before your ut. If there's a purpose clause, there's nothing that happens before the ut. But if there's a result clause, you will definitely have a ding-ding word that occurs before the ut. So this is an opportunity for you to look at all 3 sentences and figure out which one is which clause. We have 3 options of indirect statement, purpose clause, or result clause. We're going to go over these sentences in class tomorrow to see if you identified them the correct way. Here, I've given you 3 negative examples of an indirect command, a purpose clause, and a result clause, so that, again, you can figure out how to differentiate between them. We'll go over these in class tomorrow as well. So, keep your eyes peeled. Eagle eyes, as my mom used to say. There is at least one clue in every subjunctive clause that will tell you what type of clause you're translating. The same applies to indirect questions, and the same thing applies to cum clauses. So keep your eyes peeled.